The New York Giants got back to practicing on Monday and continued their preparations for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers coming up on Sunday. And yes, they have a new starting quarterback. Let's talk about it next on the Big Blue Breakdown Live. Hi again, everybody. Paul Dottino back with you tonight. So glad you could join us on the Big Blue Breakdown live show as we are here every Wednesday night, 7:30 Eastern Time, to talk New York Giants football. And boy, oh boy, do we have a whole lot to talk about tonight. You know, folks, I know the Giants have lost 5 in a row and they've dropped to 2-8 on the season. But now there are headlines. There are headlines. There are questions. There may not be a whole lot of answers, but that's why I want to have you guys on tonight's program. I would love for you guys to give me your thoughts on the Giants quarterback change, your thoughts on if it will indeed provide a spark against Tampa Bay on Sunday. What do you think Tommy DeVito is going to be able to do? How do you think the Giants are going to play out the rest of the year? Are they going to be a tough, rough, competitive team that's going to steal a bunch of victories? Or will it not work out so well? And then going forward, does Tommy DeVito really have a chance to make an impact on this Giants team to the point where during the offseason, they don't think of him as a number 3 quarterback? Maybe over the last 7 games of this season, he asserts himself into being a true number 2. All interesting questions, all interesting possibilities, all different types of factors that can become either positives or negatives as the Giants move forward through their final 7 games of the regular season. And of course, lurking in the background is then what do they do during the offseason? In terms of the draft, in terms of free agency. Oh man, so much to talk about between now and the draft in April. And it kind of starts right now because that's what this move really kicks off. An opportunity to start thinking about 2025 because Tommy DeVito can add a significant piece to the New York Giants 2025 equation by playing well over the final 7 games, enhancing his value, and asserting himself as a legitimate either backup quarterback or potentially as a bridge. I don't know. Is the ceiling so high that he can assert himself as the next starter? I'm inclined to think that that's one heck of a jump. Personally, I think that's too high of a jump. But can he assert himself as a number 2? Or as a bridge? Those are probably more realistic than asserting himself as a, quote, franchise quarterback. But what do you guys think? The link is on the bottom of your screen. It's floating around right there as it goes horizontally across the screen. Please feel free. I would love to talk to you guys about this. We'll take a video call. We'll take an audio call. And, of course, there's always the chat room on the right-hand side of the program. All right, we welcome you guys into tonight's show. The focus says hello and good evening. And I say good evening back to you. Indeed, it was 60-plus degrees, although gray skies in the New York metropolitan area today. But the Giants did have a practice. And I can tell you, as we get going through here, the Giants had everybody, and I mean everybody, back at practice today. The 2 significant guys that we did not know about during the bye week were Kayvon Thibodeau, the outstanding linebacker who had wrist surgery. Well, guess what? He was limited a day at practice, but I think that was only to kind of ramp him up and get him back into work. Saw him after the session in the locker room, had nothing on his wrist. Nothing. In fact, I even looked and I said, I don't see any difference. And he laughed. He says he feels great, and he expects to play against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Sunday when the Giants return home to MetLife Stadium. Now, his practice window is open. Brian Daboll sounded optimistic about Kayvon Thibodeaux's chances to play, but would not commit to it yet. Thibodeaux, he's itching to go. So that's number one. Number two, the other roster question that the Giants had during the bye week was wide receiver Darius Slayton. He was in the concussion protocol. You will recall that he did not make the airplane trip overseas to Munich, Germany in the loss to the Carolina Panthers 10 days ago. Well, he's fine, he's cleared, and he practiced today. So everybody on the Giants roster who was available, all 53 that were active, were able to practice today. Some guys were limited for various little reasons, but nothing to really write home about. Now, what do we know about the quarterbacks? All right, before I get to your chats, and I know we got some guys already chatting in, and hi to everybody for sure. What we know is this. Tim Boyle, who's been around the NFL for a few years, had a pit stop, as a matter of fact, with the Jets and started a couple of games last year for them. He's been signed to the practice squad. And as the Giants went through their practice sessions today, it was Tommy DeVito as the starter, Drew Lock and Tim Boyle working with scout team, and Daniel Jones did some light tossing of a football on the side. It is clear, as things stand, that Daniel Jones's status has slipped dramatically. He probably will not get into another game for the Giants the rest of the season. It is what it is. He was inconsistent over the course of the past two seasons. In fact, you'll remember in 2022, he had 5 game-winning drives in the fourth quarter, then did the same thing in the playoff game on the road in the first round against the Minnesota Vikings. And since that time, he has authored one fourth quarter come from behind victory. The inconsistencies, again, they're not all his fault. Hand grenades and landmines going off all around him. But he was not able to raise his game above those inconsistencies. And so now the Giants have made a change. Ironically, 3 weeks now it is ago, he played very well against the Washington Commanders in a game that the Giants lost, but played well. But that really doesn't matter anymore, does it? The move has been made, and it's up to Tommy DeVito now. Last year, he started 6 games and went 3-3. I want to give you guys a few numbers before I get to hopefully some phone calls and some video calls and your chats. I want to give you guys a couple of numbers here, and this has nothing to do with the quarterback. It has to do with the Giants' offense itself. The New York Giants have had 350 passing attempts this year, and according to my graded tape review, have 27 drops, which ties them for the most in the NFL. It might interest you to note that last year, Sports Radar had the Giants graded for 25 drops for the entire season. 518 passing attempts, 25 drops. This year, the Giants have 350 passing attempts and 27 drops. Now, the breakdown last year was as follows. 180 throws by Tyrod Taylor, 11 drops. 160 throws for Daniel Jones, 6 drops. 178 throws for Tommy DeVito, 8 drops. Folks, if the Giants don't start holding on to passes, it won't matter who the quarterback is. And that's the bottom line. Please understand that. This team has a bad case of the dropsies. That has to change over the second half of the season. If Tommy DeVito or anybody else is going to lead this offense into a resurgence, you cannot, with a capital C, be dropping an average of 3 passes a game and expect to win. It's just that simple. So let's make that clear right now. No quarterback change in the world is going to fix the dropsies. The Giants' offensive skill position players have to fix that themselves. That's where we start off tonight's program. All right. It is the focus, and here is Cameron Powell. Says, what are the Giants doing? Wants to know, is the team confident in Tommy DeVito? Well, Cameron, everyone in that locker room is together, contrary to whatever you may have heard from people who just can't wait to throw kerosene on the fire. It is a together locker room. The captains have done a very good job of making sure that the communication lines stay open, and they have done everything they can do to make sure that everything stays on an even keel. I know this team is frustrated and disgusted at their 2-8 record. I know these guys want to feel winning games again. Now, as far as Tommy, I think Dexter Lawrence said it best. There's a number of players in that locker room who are upset and disappointed that Daniel Jones has been benched. They appreciate him as a professional, as a person, and as a teammate. And anybody who saw what he did during the 2022 season knows about the talent that he has and how he can win ball games. But as Dexter Lawrence said, they're all professionals in that locker room. He said last year they traded my best friend when they shipped out Leonard Williams to the Seattle Seahawks. Part of this game is a business, and sometimes the business has to overrule whatever happens on the football field. There is a significant business decision involved in Daniel Jones' status. We all know about the $23 million injury protection clause that kicks in March if he cannot pass a football physical. Those are facts. That's the reality of it. And I always interpreted a football decision to mean everything that encompasses the roster. Not just play on the field, not just the tape in the workroom, but also the contract. You have to include the contract in that equation because there is a very, very harsh salary cap that will not give. It does not bend. It does not allow for exclusions. And there's nothing you can do to break it. And when you have a situation like this, it's not the NBA where teams have bird rights and can exceed the cap to re-sign their own guys. It's not like Major League Baseball where there's a luxury tax. You go over the cap, you pay, you fine. Okay, fine. Not that way in the NFL. You hit that cap. It's a ceiling. It's a ceiling that's made of steel. You can't go over it. So you have to make business decisions that ensure you will not get crushed up against that steel ceiling. Business decisions are part of football decisions. Let's make that very clear. Okay, so having said that, the Giants players understand that business is involved here, and they also believe that if the coaches are going to do everything they can to coach up Tommy DeVito and believe that they can win a game with him, they're going to give him everything they've got. And they're going to try, as Dexter Lawrence said today, they're going to try to win games with Tommy DeVito. It's that simple. He's a teammate. He's well-liked. And they're going to support him. And that's the thing about this locker room. The guys are supporting each other. It's easy for anonymous quotes to come out when a team is losing. It's easy to pile on. It's easy to find one or two guys amongst a 53-man roster and a 17-man practice squad and another small list of injured players. It's always easy to ferret out, if you really want to, that one or two guys who might have something to say negative. That's easy to do. So don't put much stock in that, because the locker room has about 70 players, the 53 on the roster, few injured guys, and then the 17 practice squad guys. So it's really 70-plus players are teammates in that locker room on a given day. And I guarantee you, if you work at a job that has 70 or so employees, and that'd be a small company, of course, but I guarantee you, you could find one or two guys or ladies amongst those 70 who might be willing under their breath to say that they don't like something, or that this isn't very good, and I'm not happy, and people aren't happy, and blah, 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 blah. I'm sure you can find that. But that doesn't say anything about the other 69 or 68 people. It just says that the one or two people that you sniffed out and ferreted out may have something negative to say. Okay, certainly possible. But this is a together locker room, and make no mistake about that. The bulk of the players, and I'm there every day. I know it. I see it. I'm on the road with them too. This locker room is unified, and they want to win. So, is the team confident in Tommy DeVito? Cameron, all I can say is they're going to do everything they can to win some games with him. And they do know that he authored 3 victories in 6 starts last season, including a last-minute win on a field goal drive against a good Green Bay Packers team. So I believe the answer is yes. Okay. Big Blue says you are not on Coach Coughlin time. I'm not sure. Well, we don't start the show 5 minutes early, Big Blue. You're right. We are not on Coach Coughlin time. We do not start the show 5 minutes early, and I don't believe that we did start it 5 minutes early. So I'm not 100% understanding that, but you're right. We try to start the show at 7:30. I did have a couple of problems pushing the button to get the live show up and running, so it is potentially, I didn't see the actual clock like at Times Square with the seconds and the minutes. We may have been a minute late as I was trying to click the buttons and get this thing going. All right, let's see. What do we have here? Is there somebody else on the chat we could talk to? Big Blue. Oh, of course you play to win the game, like Herman Edwards says. Look, I know these coaches and I know these players. I also know ownership and the front office. there is not a single solitary thought amongst anybody in that building about losing games. They've had enough of that. They want to win. Let's make that clear. I think it's probably important at this point, and I've done this before, so I'll do it one more time. And I appreciate that it's extremely unlikely, and it's a little worse off than the thing I'm going to cite. The Giants, you may remember, folks, had a first-round quarterback from Duke named Dave Brown, who did not have a very solid career with the Giants. Dan Reeves was in his second season in 1994, and the team was 3-7. Now, the Giants right now are 2-8. But the 1994 Giants were 3-7. They won their final 6 games of the season in a row. Now, why do I say that? That was not a great team by any stretch of the imagination. As a matter of fact, they got belted by the Cowboys 38-10, and that upped their winning streak to 6 in a row. They then lost their 7th game in a row to the Cardinals 10-9. Talk about a snoozer of a game. So it looked as bad as it could. You've just had 2 absolutely stinker games. You've lost 7 in a row, and you're 3-7, and you're basically cooked. And what did the Giants do? They proceeded to beat the Oilers, the Redskins, the Browns, the Bengals, the Eagles, and the Dallas Cowboys all in a row. They won their final 6 games to finish at 9-7 and lost on a tiebreaker to the Chicago Bears, who stole the last playoff spot because I believe of the 3rd tiebreaker of the many different tiebreakers that are included amongst wild card contenders. But the Giants did finish 9-7. Again, I remind you, lost 7 in a row and then won 6 in a row. So there is a precedent for a team that just gets sick and tired of losing. This team's only lost 5 in a row and decides enough is enough and then turns it around. No matter how bleak you may think it is, every time you step on the field on Sunday, you compete to win. Especially guys who put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into their efforts throughout the course of the week to go out there on Sunday knowing they're going to punish themselves in a physically taxing game as they try to feel good, at least in the ensuing hours after the game is over, if not on Monday when they wake up black and blue and nursing their wounds. So I say to you, Big Blue and everybody else out there, there's no give up here. None. And for anybody who wants to have that conversation, I'm sorry, but you can go somewhere else because that's just not part of the reality. All right. Hey, Gary Gaston, another one of our regulars. What is the vibe like in the locker room with the benching of DJ? It seems like some players aren't happy with the move. Well, Gary, I think I just went through it. I know I'm getting to you a little late on this. There's no doubt, okay? There's no doubt that Daniel Jones is well liked. He's a good guy. He's a good teammate. He's a pro. He works his butt off. Spends more hours at the facility year-round than anybody else on this current team. So they have tremendous respect for him. And as the starting quarterback of this team for the last several years, they believe that he was the best guy in the room that would give them a chance to win. Some of them, if not all of them, but I won't name names and I won't even put a number on it. But I guarantee you there are guys in that locker room who still believe Daniel Jones is the most talented quarterback in the room. And there's nothing wrong with saying that. I think Daniel Jones is the most talented quarterback in the room too. And I'm not afraid to say that. But again, there are other reasons and factors that are part of the equation known as a football decision. And if you're involved in the National Football League, you understand that there are many factors that have to go into that stew until you find out, well, not find out, but many factors that go into the stew to get the final product or the final decision, if you will, that has to be made. The dinner is done, the meal is cooked, and this is the way you've got to go. And this is the plate that's been served to you, and this is what you have to eat for dinner. So that's what it is. It's not a slight to anybody. It's not. It's not a slight to Drew Lock. It's not a slight to Tommy DeVito. If you look at the careers of all three quarterbacks, Daniel Jones is the most accomplished. The 2022 season was a reality. It happened. He did what he did, and it was good, and it earned him a contract extension. But in this world of what have you done for me lately, that doesn't necessarily carry much weight in the equation today, in 2024, when the team is 2-8 and he has certain things in his contract that are in black and white. And every NFL player has to be man enough and mature enough and smart enough to understand the circumstances that come with being an NFL player. And so that's my answer. You have to understand it. No matter if you like it or not, you have to understand it. And then you have to decide, how will you personally move forward? And anybody who's got a sense of pride about themselves as a professional will make a positive step forward and will do what they can, not only to ensure that they can be proud of their performance, but also be supportive as a teammate and do everything you can to help those around you be successful as well. The focus comes back. Paul, what is it about Tommy DeVito that the media and critics doubt him so soundly? I agree, the probabilities as an undrafted free agent, he will not be the answer, but what is he lacking that's so obvious? Well, let me see. I believe they list him at 6'2". Let me check this out. 6'2", 210 pounds. Okay. So if you want to dissect Tommy DeVito's game, the focus, he does not have the biggest frame or size. You like your NFL quarterbacks these days to be at least 6'3", hopefully 6'4", 220, 230 pounds if you can. So he's a bit undersized. But I'm going to nitpick here because you asked, so I'll try to give you discouraging things. Not that I want to pick on Tommy DeVito in any way, but you asked, where would his shortcomings be? Well, again, frame, little undersized. Arm strength, okay. I think his arm strength is okay. I think he's an NFL quarterback. I think he's got enough skills to be an NFL quarterback. But at what level are we talking about? You know? Remember, when you go to the grocery store shelf or the aisle, there's multiple shelves along the aisle. Maybe 3 shelves. Tommy DeVito, to be a top shelf guy, you have to have the size, you have to have the athleticism, you have to have the cannon of an arm, you have to have the accuracy, the touch, and have all this stuff on a consistent basis. You also have to have the ability to do all the homework and the bookwork properly. You have to have the ability to deal with pressure. You have to have the ability to deal with the hits in the pocket. Adjusting on the fly, making the right calls with the center at the line. There are so many things that involve being an NFL quarterback. I mean, I think it's pretty much universally recognized amongst all professional athletes that being an NFL quarterback is the number one hardest, most difficult thing to execute as a pro athlete. Because the checklist is as long as a roll of paper towels. And you have to be able to check every box, or at least most of them, and not just check them, but do them at a relatively high level on a consistent basis. So, you know, Tommy DeVito was an undrafted rookie free agent. If he had done most of those things or all of those things and checked those boxes and done them at a high level on a consistent basis in school, he would not have been an undrafted rookie free agent. And now that he's come to the Giants, what we saw last year, in my opinion, was enough to make him an NFL quarterback. I said all during the offseason that Tommy DeVito needed to be the number 3 quarterback on the Giants roster. Once they signed Drew Lock, Tommy DeVito needed to stick, because I am quite confident that he did enough last year to show that he belongs in this league. And if the Giants had left him unprotected and tried to wave him through to the practice squad, he would have been gobbled up in a heartbeat. Now, the question becomes, with a long body of work or a heavy body of work or a large body of work, to see how many boxes he checks, at what level, and on a consistent basis, he doesn't have any of that stuff. Not at the NFL level. So that automatically brings doubt. So what you have to figure out if you're the Giants, and this is the one silver lining of this quarterback jigsaw puzzle that the Giants have right now. Because it's 2-8. Your starting quarterback has been benched. There's nothing good about this situation. But if there is a silver lining, the Giants will be able to see how much upside Tommy DeVito has. Daniel Jones's time with this team appears to be over or coming to an end. Drew Lock is a free agent at the end of the season. It is unlikely that he will resign here, you would think. Tommy DeVito is going to be a restricted free agent in his 3rd season in the league. And as far as quarterbacks go, he will be very inexpensive. So that helps room under your salary cap. He is the only one of the 3 quarterbacks currently on the active roster that has a really good chance of returning in 2025. So if he shows you that he has upside, improves off of the games he played last year and takes it up to another level, you know you have a very good value for a guy who can play and win games. Now, Tommy's got to do that. He's got to prove that. He's got to show, much like Daniel Jones was asked to show after 2022, that there was more there, that there was indeed upside. He needed to show that. Tommy DeVito now has a chance because of what he did in 2023 in those 6 games. He's in a position where he's given himself a chance to now show that there's even more to unpack. And if DeVito is able to unpack more, he puts himself smack into the equation for being a part of this 2025 roster. And not just as a number 3. Depending upon how high he wants to point that arrow, it could be as a solid number 2, which would be a tremendous value when you think about what number 2 quarterbacks get salary-wise in the NFL today and how inexpensive he will be. That would be a tremendous economic advantage for the Giants if that works out. Or should Tommy DeVito absolutely light up the scoreboard and go on a 7-game winning streak, 6-game winning streak, whatever it is. If he absolutely pops the scoreboard bulbs, well then, you know what? All of a sudden, hey, guys, maybe Tommy DeVito deserves a legitimate chance to win a starting job next year. Because if he does that, you've got to consider him at least as the bridge going into the offseason. Now, again, the arrow is in Tommy's hands. Tommy DeVito has an arrow in his hands, and he has to point it in the right direction, and he's got to move that sucker up as high as he possibly can. He's got to max out this opportunity because it's a golden opportunity. In fact, my friends, it's a platinum opportunity. Very few players get a chance like this to really show the whole world that, hey, there is potential, there is upside here, and if he realizes a big chunk of that, he benefits and the team benefits. It's a win for everybody. That's the only silver lining that comes out of this very sticky and messy candy wrapper right now. I hope that makes some sense to you, the focus. He says you just want to see him play and make observations after. And that's exactly the point. That is exactly the point. Tommy DeVito, it is show me time. It is your chance to prove whatever it is you want to prove to the Giants and the rest of the NFL that you could be more than a number 3 on an active NFL roster. You know how many quarterbacks in this league wished that they had a chance like that? They're putting the ball in his hands and saying, hey, kid, here you go. Show us. It's a wonderful, unique, and rare opportunity that he has. Ernest Fulton. It's funny that everybody is playing now, and Jones didn't have that all year. Daboll was tanking. You will see another shorter routes for Tommy. Please watch the tapes. I'm 69 years old and have watched the Giant. I think you ran out of room there, Ernest. Tanking is not in the vocabulary here. I'm sorry that you printed that because that won't fly on this program. But you are correct in that Daniel Jones did have hand grenades going on all around him, going off. He did have landmines going off all around him. But Ernest, ultimately, here's the problem. Again, the past 2 seasons, a total of 1 come-from-behind victory in the fourth quarter. The argument can be made, and I will certainly make it, that top to bottom, the Giants 53 has more talent on it today than it had during the 2022 playoff season. And for a variety of reasons, and unfortunately Daniel Jones's inconsistencies are a part of it, the Giants are 2-8 and now also have to face some business decisions because of contractual obligations. And when you put all of those things into the equation, you understand why things are as they are today. I have supported Daniel Jones for several years. I believe in him. I believe in his work ethic, his attitude. He's a pro. I know his talent is there. And I do predict that Daniel Jones will start again in the National Football League, and he will do it and win games. Oh, I absolutely believe that. There's no doubt in my mind. Big Blue, any reason why they signed backup quarterback Tim Boyle? Well, Tim Boyle is on the practice squad. That now gives the Giants 4 quarterbacks in the room. And you have to believe that, again, I can only say this: business decisions and contractual obligations have a part of the equation. And if you understand that, you can figure out that they needed another arm in here to be throwing the football around. I mean, the Denver Broncos pulled Russell Wilson. He had a injury guarantee clause in his contract. They had fallen out of the playoff race. And to avoid having a disastrous business situation haunt them because of an injury guarantee, Russell Wilson was benched. Derek Carr was sat down by the Las Vegas Raiders. He had an injury clause in his contract. Business got into the equation, as it has to in this league. And Derek Carr was no longer playing down the stretch for the Raiders. Both players left those respective teams. Russell Wilson landed with the Steelers, where he's now a starter. Derek Carr landed with the Saints, where he has started for them. And both quarterbacks have proven that they can still win games in the National Football League. Big Blue, I don't think I can give you any more of an example of how these things work in a league that has a steel ceiling of a salary cap. Okay. Creative Solutions says we need 5 quarterbacks. You're living up to your name, Creative Solutions 7.0. That would be very creative to have 5 on the roster. The Focus says, I felt bad for Drew Lock. It was only preseason, but there were some times that I just liked how DeVito commanded the offense at times for a bunch of players who weren't going to even make the roster. Well, the Focus, that's an interesting thing that was said by Drew Lock today. He is very disappointed that he was not elevated to the starting job. But he also said he's a pro. He and Tommy DeVito have become great friends, and he's going to help him every way that he can. He also added that he understood that Tommy DeVito had been in Brian Daboll's system before last season, used that experience to help himself to win 3 games and go 3-3, and has progressed from there and clearly is more adapted, if you will, to that system than Drew Lock is. Drew himself told us today that he's had 4 different offensive systems. Now let me just check here. Let me make sure I got this exactly right, because I don't want to steer you guys wrong. Drew Lock, so far in the NFL, said today that he has been in 4 offensive systems. And he has been in the league for 5 years. That is an awful lot to ask someone to digest. And so, in saying that, he was admitting that, all right, DeVito's had 2 years in this system, and it's the only pro system he's known. So, while Drew is very disappointed not to be the starting guy right now, of course, what competitor would not feel bad? He also did the calculations and realized, okay, young player, 2nd year in the only system he's ever known, compared to me, 4 different offensive systems in 5 years, and I've only been in here for 6 months. He rationalized that, you know what? There's some beef to that logic. And he prides himself, Drew said he prides himself in being a pro. Well, if you're going to be a pro, you have to be able to digest those things and understand that there is some logic behind a decision such as this one. Okay, what do we have here? So Creative comes back, Creative Solutions. They should have stuck with Tommy as number 2. Why are we signing more people, wasting money just saying you don't trust anyone? No. Signing Tim Boyle to a practice squad contract really doesn't do anything except help them run scout team during the week and allowing Daniel Jones to be the 4th quarterback at practice, where he really does not get involved in anything that could cause an injury. There's really nothing else I could say about that. You know, this is a smart business decision to add a practice squad quarterback. Tim Boyle is not here to compete with Tommy DeVito or to challenge Tommy DeVito. I believe Tim Boyle is here to be the 3rd string, but a practice squad quarterback. At least that would be my take. Gary Gaston comes back. And by the way, folks, again, we've got the link here on the screen. Call us up with a video call. Call us up with an audio call. If you don't want to use your screen, that's okay. I like to talk to people. It's hard to talk to people when I have to read chats. All I can do is answer a chat. That's not the same. All right, Gary says, I will go best player available in the draft and not force a quarterback. Well, Gary, you're a very smart man. I totally concur. Stopgap quarterback until 2026 draft. How do you feel about that? Gary, as I sit here today, let me check my watch. November 20th. People have said to me who know something about scouting, okay, I've been doing this for 42 years. I know a lot of scouts. I know a lot of retired coaches. I know a lot of retired scouts. I got quite a Rolodex. People have said to me right now, it is a common thought that even if you like Sanders or you like Ward as the top 2 quarterbacks in this draft, neither one of them would have been amongst the top 5 quarterbacks drafted in this year's draft. So we're talking about quarterbacks 6 and 7 in the 2024 draft. Well, I don't necessarily think it makes a whole lot of sense if the Giants are picking in the top 10 to draft someone of that value. So I'm with you, Gary. I think they're better off trying to see what they can do about a bridge. And again, maybe Tommy DeVito can be part of that equation and perhaps get themselves another veteran quarterback. Look, it's worked for the Steelers. Russell Wilson is helping them probably go to the playoffs. It worked for the Giants when they signed Kurt Warner. And Kurt Warner became a 5-4 starting quarterback before they turned to rookie Eli Manning back in the 2004 season. It also worked for the Giants when after several years of subpar quarterback play, Ernie Accorsi signed one Kerry Collins and resuscitated his career off the scrap heap. And Kerry Collins led the Giants to a Super Bowl during the 2000 season. And of course, authored one of the most impressive NFC Championship game passing performances that has ever been put forth on tape, when the Giants absolutely destroyed and manhandled the powerful and mighty Minnesota Vikings 41-0 at the old Giant Stadium in the most dominant big game performance that stadium ever saw. Kerry Collins was given up for nothing. He'd been with Carolina, had been with New Orleans, had gone through personal issues. He was on the top of the recycle bin, just sitting there for anybody to talk to. And because he was a Penn State guy, and Ernie Accorsi, of course, with his Penn State connections and knowing Joe Paterno as well as he did the research and decided, you know what? This quarterback situation that we got here right now, not working out so well. Let's see what we could do with Kerry Collins. And Kerry Collins turned out to be pretty darn good for the New York Giants. And again, I mentioned Kurt Warner as another bridge. Collins was more than a bridge. He was their starter and got them into the playoffs twice. And even got them to a Super Bowl. So yes, Gary, I personally would rather go that way and see if they can find the next Kerry Collins or the next Kurt Warner and not force a first-round quarterback higher than it needs to be. I am with you 5,000% as I sit here on November 20th. I reserve the right to change my mind as we get closer to the draft. Hopefully I'll be going back to the combine again this year and learning a lot more about these guys. And maybe I'll have a different opinion at that point. But I agree. I would prefer to sign a veteran, and hopefully Tommy DeVito will prove worthy over the final 7 games of the season, and the Giants can go with the veteran and DeVito. And if they so choose to draft a quarterback lower in the round by moving down or taking a second rounder and let that guy be the number 3 and then develop him along, boy, that makes the most sense to me, Gary. It really does. Wouldn't that be perfect for the Giants if they could sign a veteran who gives them some really good ball next year? Tommy progresses well enough to be the 2, and then they could groom a number 3, and whenever that kid's ready down the road, maybe that's your guy. And maybe that guy turns out to be your franchise for 10 years. But you don't have to rush him along if he's the number 3. That's the beauty of it. He can sit and learn, which is really what most quarterbacks should do. You know, Gary, it's funny. If you remember, during my coverage of the Combine on Big Blue Kickoff Live, I had said then at the Combine, my two favorite quarterbacks in this draft were Drake May and Bo Nix. A lot of folks like Drake May. Maybe not as much as I did, but they liked him. And not as many people were as high on Bo Nix as I was. So far, those two guys have done pretty well for themselves. But I don't want to gloat. We got to wait a few years. Because I always say, I do believe in that theory of waiting at least 3 years before you start putting any grades on anybody. So let's see how it works out. Let's see after 3 years what Drake May is. Let's see after 3 years what Bo Nix is. But I stand by the fact that those were my two favorite quarterbacks in this draft for a variety of reasons. Don't know says, what's wrong with Mara's kid? He told Daboll and the GM not to get rid of Barkley, and if you do, not to Philly. The Giants didn't have a choice of where Saquon Barkley was going to land. So they did not send him to Philadelphia. Saquon Barkley, on his own free will, was offered the most money by Philadelphia and immediately jumped at it. That's what happens when you're an unrestricted free agent. You have the right to listen to bidders and to jump at the highest bidder when they come calling. That is what happened. There's nothing wrong with anybody. That's the way things usually work in unrestricted free agency. Derek Jones. Should Daniel go home since he will never get on the field again? Why stay? Well, Daniel Jones is going to talk to the media tomorrow. He will have a press availability, and I'm sure he will explain all of his feelings and answer as many of those questions that he can answer. And I'm sure that that may be one of the things that comes up during his briefing. So I will not answer for him. I will allow him to answer tomorrow when he becomes available to the media. But thank you, Derek, for the comment, and I do understand the question. I'm sure it will be asked of him. All right, creative solutions. All of these words, football decision, speak straight to stop hiding behind fancy words. Just say we are losing and we need a change. Both Brian Daboll and Joe Shane said they are unhappy with the 2-8 record. John Mara has said they are unhappy with the record. Everybody expected more. They all said they take blame and share blame, which is spread through the entire roster. The defense has had its moments of blame. The entire offense has had its moments of blame. The coach has said himself he's had moments of blame. And General Manager Joe Shane has said that there are some things that he wished perhaps he had done differently because we are all human, we all make mistakes, and we're all fallible. So, creative solutions, you're a creative guy, but let's not go overboard and start creating fancy speak because the reality is exactly what it is that they've said. They're truth sayers at the moment, and that's the name of that tune. Okay, Derek Jones, he's again talking about Daniel Jones, and does say, is he still a teammate? Well, yes, he is. He is signed to the New York Giants. He is still under contract. As Brian Daboll said, he was in meetings. He did, so far this week, have many discussions with Tommy DeVito, and Tommy DeVito said that he has helped, Daniel Jones has helped him and given him pointers for this weekend's game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They've gotten the whole quarterback room gets along marvelously well. And they all try to help each other. And to this point, that hasn't changed. And Daniel Jones was in gear and did go out to the practice field today. And albeit that from the portions that we saw, he was operating more as the fourth quarterback because he was only throwing some throws on the side, but he was out there. And he was in the meetings. And Tommy DeVito said they have been talking about the Buccaneers. Well, that qualifies. All those things define a teammate. So, Derek Jones, the answer is yes. He is still a teammate. All right. Creative comes back with something else. Daniel Jones should go home, talk to his agency about getting on other teams, but I would like for him to work on him to himself. Mandate, let go so his decision-making skills can be rapid. Well, Creative, look, anytime something like this happens in any job and, you get pulled backwards, no matter what job it is, you're going to reevaluate yourself and try to figure out how you can do things that will prevent someone from, taking a step back with you. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. Daniel Jones needs to reevaluate and needs to figure out how he can get back to that guy who was a playoff winning quarterback in 2022. He has been inconsistent the last 2 years. He did not take a step forward. Now, did he get hurt? Yes. The line was a disaster last year that he played behind. We all know that. It was historically bad. Then he rips up his knee. Then he makes a terrific early comeback. And did that maybe partially contribute? Nobody knows. Has the team dropped too many passes on him? Yes. Has the protection at times let him down? Yes. Have there been too many critical penalties in key moments? Yes. Again, hand grenades and landmines have gone off all around Daniel Jones. But ultimately, the guy who played quarterback for the Giants in 2022, if he was playing at that level, he probably could have overcome some of those things this year and maybe pulled a couple of wins out of the fire. But he has not played at that level since that time. So he certainly has to share in the responsibility for where the Giants sit at 2-8. So yes, he needs to do what he needs to do to rebuild himself. And I'm sure he's going to get another chance in this league to start. And he will win games. The talent is there. The toolbox is absolutely there. And he will do well. Derek Jones again, I think the quarterback position is overrated. Some not all-time greats have won Super Bowls. Oh, Derek, this is another whole philosophical question, and I could probably be here for another 5 hours discussing that one. And I really don't want to. I will lose my voice and not be able to talk for weeks. Maybe some of you would like that. I don't know. Here's what I will say. Okay? There are only a handful or so of true all-star quarterbacks in the league. And we know who they are. Right? We know who they are. Mahomes. Starts right there. Right? And then you start Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert. You start notching your way down a little bit. Okay. Here's the problem. Anybody who wants to be so incredibly fickle and say that, okay, we have to have an all-pro superstar quarterback to win. Anybody who does that is being unrealistic because there are not 32 of them to go around. There aren't. There aren't that many superstar quarterbacks in this league. If you're lucky, you have one of the half a dozen or so superstar quarterbacks in this league. Then after that, you got another small group of really good ones. But half of the teams in the league are going to have an average quarterback at best. That's just the way it is. There are not enough all-star quarterbacks to go around and fill up a 32-team National Football League. There are not. So, to demand that your team has one doesn't make a whole lot of sense because they're so hard to come by. They're hard to find. Teams go for generations sometimes not finding one. Look what's happened to the Jets over the years. Look what's happened to the Cleveland Browns over the years. Okay? Look what happened to the Buffalo Bills over the years until they finally found Josh Allen. Look what happened to the Giants between Sims. And then they finally found Kerry Collins after a few years. And then, of course, Eli Manning. See, Giants fans were spoiled because they had Eli Manning for well over a decade and knew that that was a position that they didn't have to worry about. Eli, by the way, one of the 25 modern-day football players still on this year's ballot for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Next round cuts to 15, then it cuts to 10, then it cuts to 7, and then the final vote will put between 3 and 5 players in for this year's Hall of Fame class. Hall of Fame, come on. No doubt. Eli Manning, lock, stock, and barrel, cemented in stone. The man deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. I don't care if it's first ballot, second ballot. Doesn't matter to me what ballot it is. This is not baseball where first ballot is, oh, so important to tradition. I'm not buying that stuff. I don't care if it's first ballot, second ballot, but just don't make the man wait very long because he is a Hall of Famer through and through, has been since the day he hung up his cleats. So don't make him wait too long. In any event, how spoiled was this franchise to have Eli Manning for well over a decade? You didn't have to worry about going out and finding one. Well, this is what happens when you don't have one. If you're not lucky enough to be one of those handful of teams that has an all-star, or the next handful of teams that has a really good one, you're half of the league that has to settle with a guy who's okay, average, mediocre, or maybe poor. There aren't enough to go around. There are not 32 all-star quarterbacks each and every year in this league. So to just say that, oh, it's so easy to just snap your fingers and grab one, doesn't work out that way. Because you know at least half the teams in the league are fighting to get one of those guys just like you are. So, to some degree, you have to be lucky. That's it. The Giants were lucky that nobody else wanted to recycle Kerry Collins, and he got him to a Super Bowl. The Giants were lucky that nobody wanted to sign Kurt Warner for a year. The Giants got lucky. Hopefully they'll get lucky again this year, and there'll be a quality veteran quarterback who is a good fit for this team and wants to come here. That would be my best hope for the Giants. Because drafting one, especially in a quarterback class that is not presumed to be filled with shiny diamonds, is risky business. Again, we're talking on November 20th. We're not talking about this in April. On November 20th, it does not seem like if you've got a top 5 pick that you would want any of these quarterbacks that high. It just doesn't seem that way from everything that I've been told. And the bust rate on first-round quarterbacks is ridiculously high. So, Derek Jones, I don't know if that answers your question, but that's just a philosophical conversation about quarterbacks in general and the position. One thing I can tell you is that there's a high bust rate on first-round QBs, and if you play that game and miss in rolling the dice, well, you could be doing it time and time and time again until you finally get it right. That doesn't sound like a very tasty proposition. Again, ask the Cleveland Browns, ask the New York Jets. Okay, Creative Solutions says if you have Saquon Barkley, you don't need a quarterback. I'm glad he put LOL there because someone's got to laugh at that joke. Not going to be me. Derek Jones comes back again. We got the same people who keep chatting here. You guys could come on the chat. You could, hey, well, why don't we do an audio call or a video call? We could do better than doing these crazy chats. My goodness. Doug Williams, Foley, Jim McMahon, Flacco, some all-time great quarterbacks that never won Super Bowls. Marino, Kelly, Rogers won one. No, Marino did not win. Dan Marino got to one Super Bowl and he lost. Jim Kelly got to 4 Super Bowls. He lost all 4. Oh, yes, I see. That's what you meant. Guys never won one, Marino, Kelly. And then Rogers won one. Yes. Derek, you are accurate. That is correct. I misunderstood the way you wrote your comment. See, that's why if we talk, we can do better with the communication. This is like reading a chat's like reading Twitter. It can really be confusing and misleading. All right. Of course, you don't want to talk about mediocre quarterbacks. How about the fact that Trent Dilfer actually won one with the Ravens when they beat the Giants? Anyway. Yes, Derek, you can win with an average quarterback if you have everything else in place. Yeah. You do need some luck, though. You do need some luck. And that goes for any Super Bowl champion. There's a certain amount of luck in every single Super Bowl championship team, no matter what talent they have. There is going to be some luck involved. All right, Gary. Since we signed quarterback Tim Boyle, what's the salary cap ramifications? No. That's not where that situation is. He's asking, what's the salary cap ramifications if we cut DJ now? I don't believe there's... you know what? I'm not going to speak to that because there may be something that I don't know about within the course of the contract, within the fine print, etc., etc., etc. So I won't speak to that. But I do believe, okay, we all understand that there's $20+ million in dead money if Jones is released before the new NFL calendar year in March, they would save, I think it's something like $19 million in terms of salary, but they will be hit with more than $20 million in dead money as they go into free agency. The contract was structured by the Giants in such a way that they could digest that if things did go south. And isn't that the amazing part about this? The Giants organization deserves a tremendous amount of credit, Joe Schoen in particular, for signing Daniel Jones to a contract extension, got it done. Guy wins a playoff game. They feel there's more upside to come, so they sign him to a deal. They make that happen. And yet, Joe Schoen was able to put a digestible trigger in the deal that would be able to get the Giants out of it after 2 seasons, just in case things went south. Things have gone south. And now, because of the way the contract was structured, there's a digestible way to move on. I can't imagine anybody who would not applaud that in retrospect based on how this thing played out. But somehow, I don't think I've heard anybody else say that. And I'm not sure why. Quickly, just great teams win championships, says Derek Jones. Eli beat the greatest twice. Of course he did. Another reason why Eli Manning is a Hall of Famer. Hey, look at this. Here's C. Webb coming back to the program. All right, C. Webb, how you doing, my man?
Hey, P-Dot, how you doing, man?
Good to see you again.
You as well. Fortunately, didn't get to see you watching week, but it's okay. I get to chop it up with you now.
I hope people are not as bashful as they have been and see that it's very, very easy, like you, to get on the video call and have a conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, P-Dot, look where we are now, and it's unfortunate that a lot of the moves Joe Schoen has made hasn't come to fruition. I'm sorry. We were just talking about the quarterback. The quarterback didn't come to fruition. He made a deal that he hoped was going to come to fruition. It just didn't work out. And it's time to pivot now.
And that's what they're doing.
Exactly.
And again, C. Webb, as I just said a second ago, thank goodness for their sake that there is an opportunity to pivot out. I don't understand why I'm not hearing anybody even address the fact that that was a good piece of foresight by them.
Yeah. People just like to argue, P-Dot. That's all it is.
Well, I try to deal in facts. That's my MO. I deal in facts.
I mean, we've talked about it before. I think the biggest thing you can look back to is just complimentary football. We haven't seen that by the Giants except for the times when they won the 2 football games they won. It's always time to go win the game and somebody to step up and make a play, and they just never can get guys to step up. And it's just a young team that's trying to grow and ascend.
C. Webb, I've coined a term on Big Blue Kickoff Live that the Giants are the most unclutched team this year that I have seen in my 42 years of covering this franchise.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know if you heard the number I gave at the beginning of the show. Last year, the Giants had thrown, as a team, 518 passes and had 25 drops. This year, they've thrown 350 and have 27 drops.
Mm-hmm.
How do you figure that?
2 things can be true. Poor play by the receiver, just not focusing and catching the football. Some of those could be balls that could be placed a little bit better.
Yep.
But I'm not buying into it's one or the other. It's both.
You know what's interesting? Now, some teams in the NFL subscribe to a data service, not so much an analytics service, but a data service called Sports Radar. they've been in business for a long time, and they've been primarily in Europe. And they do a lot of data service studies for European soccer teams. A few years ago, they got involved with the National Football League. And there are a number of teams now who are subscribing to their data service. They're not asking for grades or analytics. They're asking for pure data. You follow me?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
I'm with you.
Now, here's the interesting part. And this is going to absolutely blow your mind when I tell you this. Okay? I'm looking it up on my laptop because I have this in my database. So let me take a look at this. And it's going to blow your mind when I tell you something. All right. This year, now they have a stat. They have a piece of data that they keep. And it's an accuracy stat for quarterbacks in the NFL. And it's called on-target throws. Now, that's for a pass that reasonably should have been caught. It doesn't have to be perfect. Ball placement is being fussy. Okay? Ball placement means the dart hit the center of the target. Right? I mean, you go to a bar and you hit the center of the bullseye and everybody wants to buy your beer, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you just were one color or one number short, you could still win your dart game because you still hit the board and you still threw a good dart. And you didn't put the dart in the wall of the bar. You didn't put a hole in the guy's paneling, right?
Right.
Okay. So they have a number called on-target passes. Okay? And they equate the percentage, or they use it to figure out the percentage of on-target passes that were thrown by each team's quarterbacks. Okay? The Giants this year have an on-target pass percentage of 79%, which ranks 11th in the National Football League.
Interesting.
So they are 11th, and of course Daniel Jones is the only one who's been, outside of a few Drew Lock passes, it's basically Daniel Jones. So you have the Dolphins, the Seahawks, the Commanders, the Lions, the Vikings, the Chargers, Falcons, Cardinals, Patriots, Chiefs. By the way, Chiefs are at 79.1%. The Giants are at 79%. So their percentage of target accuracy is basically identical to Patrick Mahomes. Within 0.1%. Does that number interest you at all?
Absolutely.
Somehow that number, that stat doesn't make it into the papers every day, does it?
Nobody wants to talk about that.
No. So the Kansas City Chiefs have 11 drops on the season and the Giants have 27. And yet, percentage of target accuracy is identical, within 0.1%. I kind of let those numbers speak for themselves.
Living the facts,
I don't really need to say anything else.
Yeah. Got a question for you, P-Dot, just your opinion or whatnot. Where are you with this regime, whether it be Joe Shane or Brian Daboll? Is it too early to say? Kind of, do you think they're 100% coming back? It's 50-50, 75-25?
Oh, I don't think there's any doubt, that when I look at this 53, and I've talked about this on this program as well as Big Blue Kickoff Live, the overall talent on the 53, and then include the practice squad and the injured guys, I think there's more upside here, and it's a lot younger team than the 2022 team that made the playoffs. But the 2022 team was more clutch. This team is unclutch.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that Joe Shane and his staff, Brian Daboll and the rest of them, yeah, I'm behind them. I think that they do at this point, with 7 games to go, I'd like to believe that the football gods are going to find the gentleman who's got the Giants voodoo doll in his basement and it's got 50 pins stuck in that voodoo doll. I'd like to think that they'll find him, they will get rid of that voodoo doll, and the Giants will actually start making some standard plays, some routine plays, and maybe, God forbid, some clutch plays, and actually win 3 or 4 more games this year. I mean, look, C-Web, I look at the schedule, right? And I say to myself, Tampa, they're on a 4-game losing streak. They're having a hell of a time right now. Dallas, heck, Jerry Jones was saying, hey, all the way, man, we're going to go far into the playoffs this year. Look at the mess that they're in. I mean, this is the quicksand right now that is most of the NFL. There are 9 teams in this league that have 3 or less wins. So I look at Tampa, I look at Dallas, I look at Atlanta, I look at New Orleans, I look at the Colts, and I'm like, if the Giants would just clean up their routine plays and make some clutch plays for a change, why can't they win at least 3 or 4 of the last 7?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think, realistically, we know what the Eagles are. I don't know if they're going to need the game at the end of the year or not. I have no idea, what's going to happen against the Ravens, who clearly look like a contender. And you'd have to believe, that's going to be a tremendously difficult game for the Giants. Absolutely.
And last time we played them, we beat them. We beat them,
did.
so I know they want to embarrass us.
We did. Remember the forced fumble and Leonard
I was there, yeah.
at MetLife Stadium?
Mm-hmm.
How great
Lamar
did
threw that
Lamar Jackson
interception
look
on the
that
35?
day?
Yeah.
So, I'm with Joe Shane. I believe he's right. I don't think this team is that far away. I think they've been very, very unclutch, and they just haven't made enough of the routine plays that they really should have made with their eyes closed. And, of course, I don't need to get into the officiating, but I also don't think, like in the Pittsburgh game, they weren't done any favors.
Mm-hmm.
So, on that basis, as long as this team continues to be competitive and plays hard and together and can, show me that they still are on track in terms of the belief that they are a better team, why would you make a change?
You shouldn't.
So that's where I'm at. Now, on the other hand, I think every GM or every owner would tell you, if the team fractures and splits and points fingers and doesn't play hard, now you have to start scratching your head and you have to say, well, something's amiss here. We now have to consider possible alternatives. I never saw that last year, despite the fact that the Giants did not win a whole bunch of games. I never saw that. And I don't think I'm going to see that this year.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're going to be as competitive in the second half as they were in the first half, and they just make a few more routine plays, they've got 1 interception, for God's sakes. 1! The whole season, they got 1 interception.
Yeah.
They haven't won the turnover battle in 1 game yet this year? You know how hard that is to do? Especially considering they don't turn the ball over very much. They're just not getting takeaways. What's the odds of that? And it's not even about your talent. Why is it that every time they seem to play somebody, I was talking to one of the defensive backs last week, And I said, you know what's funny? Even guys who usually throw picks, like opening day when they played the Minnesota Vikings, Sam Darnold is known for being erratic. He's known for giving 2 or 3 opportunities and interceptions every time he plays a game. He plays the Giants opening day. He was razor sharp. The one interception was a deflection by Dexter Lawrence that Muasau caught. It's amazing at how incredibly accurate they've run into the most accurate quarterbacks on every given Sunday. It's ridiculous. Because I haven't kept this stat, C-Web, but I can't tell you the last time they might have dropped 2 interceptions all year that they really had a chance at. It's amazing how the ball and all the circumstances have gone against them. I can't believe that all of those circumstances that have befuddled them the first half of the year are going to continue for the next 7 games. I can't believe that. So my belief is that this team is good enough to play virtually 500 ball the rest of the way, and that they will win 3 or 4 games. Absolutely. And if that happens, why would you make a change?
How are you going to solve the quarterback issue if this team goes and wins 4 games?
Well, as I said to one of our guys before in the chat, my favorite position on November 20th, right now, we still have some time to go. I hope I get to go to the Combine again this year, and I get to do all my homework and my study up there too. But my position right now, I would like to see the Giants. I would love to see, for them, Tommy DeVito win those 3 or 4 games, show that he is a capable number 2. Okay? I'd love to see that happen. The Giants go out and get a veteran quarterback who has something on his resume. And then if they decide that they want to draft a guy who can sit as a number 3 for a couple of years, I'd be fine with that. If they decide they don't want to draft anybody and wait to 2026, I'd be fine with that too. I'd rather see them do that than force a top 5 or top 6 pick on a quarterback that most people probably don't think is worth that slot. Because if there's one thing we know about first-round quarterbacks, especially guys who were drafted in the top 10, they bust an awful lot of the time. And when you pick one of those guys and they bust, the pain and the agony will haunt you for years. It will set your franchise back a long time. And you know what? Absolutely. If you don't believe me, well, for every critic of Daniel Jones out there, he was a number 6 overall pick in the draft. And if you decide that you want to clarify him as a bust, that's fine. But then doesn't that prove the point that when you draft one of those guys that high, you will pay a dear price for years to come?
Absolutely.
So I would prefer to stay away from that. If it were me on November 20th, I may get other information as we go down the pike that makes me feel differently. But I would love to find the next Kerry Collins. I would love to find the next Kurt Warner. Or as Pittsburgh found this year, Russell Wilson. I would love to be able to do that. But that's me. I know there's a bunch of people out there who will put a blindfold on and say, just give me the top-rated quarterback, whoever he is, wherever we are in the first round.
And then spit him out if he's not good in 2026 and go draft another one.
Yeah, well,
that same person's probably saying that too. But we know that our organization hasn't acted that way in a long time.
There are people who are so anxious, to automatically draft a quarterback in the first round that you got to wonder, have they ever done their homework on anything? Because they will ignore everything, every fact, and everything that is discussed because they have blinders on and say it's got to be a quarterback in the first round no matter what. But as any good football person will tell you, when you draft desperate, you usually make a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
Desperation will make you do very foolish things. Now, at the same time, if at the time the Giants draft, wherever it is, and if they win 3 or 4 games, they'll be down further. They're not going to be a top 3 or a top 5. Not if they win 3 or 4 games. More. So if they're picking 10, and they think that there's a quarterback there at 10 who was worth that spot, well then go ahead. Take him. I still think they'd be better off with a bridge and not put that guy into the starting lineup in September of 2025. But that's just me. It all depends on the guy, of course. If you remember, my 2 favorite quarterbacks in this draft were Drake May and Bo Nix. Both of those guys had played an awful lot of college football, especially Nix, who started more NCAA games than any quarterback in history.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not surprised he's doing well. He was pro-ready.
Mm-hmm.
So, but man, you better be darn sure if you're taking a quarterback in the top 10 because the bust rate is very, very high. And the pain is agonizing if you make a mistake. I think, to me, I'd much rather, if I'm not sure, I'd much rather sign somebody who has a professional NFL resume of winning some games. That, to me, sounds less risky.
Totally agree.
But I got a hunch. We have well over 700 people watching this program right now, at least according to the count on my live screen. I got a hunch most of those people wouldn't agree. They probably just want to take one in the first round no matter what. That's just the nature of the emotions of fans nowadays. Mm-hmm. Emotions tend to take over, and then it makes you desperate. I don't think they should be desperate.
Spot on.
Then again, C-Web, I was in favor of keeping Kerry Collins for another year. I thought Kerry Collins could get the Giants to another Super Bowl. I wanted the Giants to draft Robert Gallery to enhance their offensive line that year. I didn't think it was a great decision to go for a QB. But Ernie Accorsi felt that Eli Manning was a can't miss, had to have him. Turned out he was absolutely right, and I would have been wrong. I don't pretend to be right every time. Nobody, come on, none of us are right every time.
No.
I thought that Eli Manning had at least another year left in him, and I still believe that. And I thought the Giants went a year too early, and that I didn't think they would draft one at 6, but then when they made the trade and had a pick lower at 17, I thought, well, if they do take one, maybe they take one at 17. But that guy's going to sit for a year while Eli continues to play. Well, they surprised me. They went and they took Jones at 6 because they had intel that there were at least 2 teams in the NFL. There were 3 interested in Jones, 2 that were absolutely going to grab him before 17. So they felt like they had to take him at 6. Now, what I did not agree with was that he was force-fed into the lineup a little too soon. I think Eli Manning should have had another year. But we could debate that for the next 10 hours, whether or not that would have been the right thing or not. Mm-hmm. I don't know that anybody could say, even in hindsight, that was the right time to make that switch. I don't think it was. I would have allowed Eli to play another year and allowed Daniel Jones to sit. Might that have produced a different result? I don't know. Nobody knows.
Yeah.
But I'm not afraid to admit it because I'm on record with everything that I say, and I stick around. I don't hide behind anything, and I have no alibis. You know me.
Right.
You've been watching me for how many years?
A while now. Yeah.
So, that's how I felt. I felt Jones should have sat for a year, and they didn't do it. And I think if they take one now, that guy should sit for a year too. But it's not my call, is it?
No. Yeah.
That's why I do what I do, and I don't get paid the millions and millions of dollars to make those kinds of decisions.
Right.
And by the way, as I've told many people many, many times, I'm a paisan. I got enough stress already built in. I don't need any more. Oh, C-Web, I appreciate you coming in on the program tonight. Anything else?
Speaking of Jones, where do you think his market is after he leaves the Giants?
You know what? Somebody said to me the other day, how many teams you think need a quarterback in this league? And I think you heard me say earlier in the program, half the teams in this league probably wish they could upgrade their quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
You could probably make a case for 8 or 9 who have a pretty weak quarterback situation. Not just average, but pretty weak. I don't think Daniel Jones is going to have much trouble if he becomes a free agent looking for a job. Somebody out there is going to say, this guy has a toolbox.
We'll take a chance on him. Yeah.
And he will, in my opinion, Daniel Jones is going to start in this league again. And he's going to win games in this league again. The toolbox is real. I know there have been circumstances that have sidetracked him, but the toolbox is real. And I'll root for him. Wherever he is, I'll root for him. I'm not afraid to admit it.
Yeah. It's unfortunate. He just had a messed up situation, and that's been the Giants for a while.
Some of it is his own inconsistencies.
Yeah.
And some of it is the situation around him.
Yeah.
But you know what? They tell you all the time, life isn't fair, right?
Absolutely.
You got to deal with the cards that deal with the cards you dealt.
Go make it happen.
That's it. That's it.
Cool.
And I know this. For every Daniel Jones hater out there, it's foolish to have rooted against him. Because it would have been better for the Giants and everybody concerned had he bounced back and been that playoff quarterback again and performed at a high level and continued what he had built on in 2022. It would have been better for everybody involved. The Giants would have had a guy who was performing at a high level. They wouldn't have to worry about finding another quarterback. And the ship would have been, cruising along the ocean exactly like they wanted it to. It would have been better for everybody had this worked out. But you know how it is, right?
Absolutely.
People get caught up and they want to be anti somebody and they want to root for them to fail for some reason. And not just, it would have been better for all involved had Daniel Jones been able to play to his potential and be the guy that the Giants wanted him to be and expected him to be. It would have been better for everybody.
Absolutely. Cool. Have a great evening, P-Dot.
C-Web, thank you so much, man. I appreciate you for being brave enough to come on the program. You see, I don't bite. Some
Anytime,
people must
man.
think that I bite.
No, you don't bite at all, man.
I don't. I'm a little loud, but I don't bite.
You're a paisan, like you said.
That's it.
Yeah.
Be good, my man. Hey,
have a good one,
catch
man.
you
Be
next
good.
time, okay?
Sounds good.
Thank you. Love it. Love when C-Web comes on the program. He's a great fan. Has great questions. We have intelligent conversation. I love that. All right, let's see. Who else do we have here? It's already after 9 o'clock, so we've been on the program over an hour and a half, hour 45 to be exact. I'm going to try to take it to the bottom of the hour If I don't get any calls or videos, I will try to take it to the bottom of the hour. We'll see if I can. I don't know. What do we have here? A little issue with the chat room. There we go. All right, comments. All right, here we go. All right, so we got more chat comments. So let's see how many of those suckers we can knock out. And we'll decide at 9:30 if we're going to close the program or we're going to hang with you. I see we got well over 700 people and counting, which is great. Appreciate you folks for checking in tonight. Whether or not you disagree is fine. We can always agree to disagree. Hopefully, if you have something that you're interested in or a question that you want answered, you reach out and we try to provide you with those answers. Or if you just have an opinion, by all means, opinions are fine too, especially with the Giants in the state of flux as they are right now. Okay, let's see, where are we now? I got to get back here. I got to get back to some of these chats. Let's see, where are we at? All right, here we go. Yep. Okay. Creative Solutions says, people thought Eli Manning was trash. You can't please everyone. Yeah, well, those people who thought that, I suppose they won't be going to Canton when Eli Manning's inducted into the Hall of Fame because they won't have any reason to celebrate. And that's okay. Let's see, what else do we have here? Well, Derek Jones says, I'm done with the Giants this year. I'll watch them again next year if they get a quarterback I like. That's your prerogative too. No one is forcing you to watch any particular team. You have to do what you're most comfortable with. But I appreciate the fact that you're participating in the program, and at least we can have some conversation about it. All right, here we go. Here's G-Men 7. Outside of Cam Ward, there doesn't seem to be an elite quarterback in the draft. You see us getting a stopgap quarterback in free agency. G-Men 7, I'm all for signing a veteran quarterback in free agency. I've made that clear. Especially unless the Giants totally believe at the time they pick in the first round that there is a guy who they are all in on. If you have any doubts at all, don't pick the quarterback. Now, free agency is going to come up before the draft. That's what makes it a little tricky. But if you can come to a reasonable deal with a free agent who has already won some games in this league and you're comfortable with, seems to me that's the way to go. Now, I don't know who's going to be available on the trade market, but maybe that's also something that you might want to explore. I'd rather see them do that because I think the bust rate would be proven to be higher on a first-round quarterback in what is supposed to be a weak quarterback draft. I think the bust rate will prove to be higher there than acquiring a veteran who's won some games in the NFL before. That's the way I see it. And I do think that the Giants' talent level overall, from top to bottom, like Joe Shane said, it's a competitive team. So I'd rather take the lower risk move and get my hands on a veteran who can win some games and see how that will work in 2025. But that's how I feel today on November 20th. I could change my mind over the course of the next how many months. Again, I hope to get to the combine. That's where I do a ton of research and I get a ton of intel as to what's going on. All right. Let's see. What do we have here? The focus. Does Tommy's number 15 have anything to do with Hostetler? Not that I know of. I mean, Jeff Hostetler was 15, but I don't think... You know what? Let me take a look at what number Tommy was in college. I'll be frank with you. I don't know what number he was in college. And one of the reasons that I don't know is because I didn't do any tape scout work on him when he came out last year. At Syracuse, he was 13, and at Illinois, he was 3. So why is he 15 now with the Giants? I don't know the answer to that. I can ask him if you want to. I will. Why not? I'll ask him. Derek Jones says, I think Sanders is the best quarterback. He's very accurate. Well, some people think Ward is the best quarterback in this draft. Some others think it's Sanders. Most people who have studied this and do this for a living, I don't watch a ton of college football in terms of scouting purposes during the season. I'm too tied up with what I'm doing. I tend to catch on late and then cram later on and rely on a lot of intel when I get it at the combine. So I am not a year-round draft guru like so many of these other people are who get paid to do that for a living. Some of those people tell me that there's no quarterback in this draft, Ward or Sanders, that would have been amongst the top 5 quarterbacks drafted this year. Take that for what it's worth. And how does that make you feel about taking somebody in the top 10? That would make me really squeamish. All right, let's see. Creative Solution says you're supposed to post a StreamYard link in the chat so people can click on it. Just be aware who show. Well, Creative, we have it in the not in the chat. We have it on the video. But I tell you what, here's what I'm going to do. Let's see here. Hold on a second. Let's see here. There we go. What happened here? The ticker is there. Well, I was going to try to stick it back in the chat, but I couldn't do that. I am not the most techie guy. But in any event, my friend, I believe the parent company of this website has stuck that up there a number of times in the chat, and I know that the link has been running across the ticker on the bottom of the screen. So I think there's a lot of people, if they really wanted to, they could do a video call or an audio call. God knows C. Webb has been on our program a number of times already, and it didn't inhibit him from being able to join us that way. All right, let's see here. One guy, well, you know, let's see. All right. Sean Jackson. All right, here we go. Here's somebody new. Want to try to get some new folks on here. Working around the Giants facility. Honestly, what's the atmosphere culture like around the Giants after the quarterback switch? How's John Mauer dealing with the mess in the 100th season? It's killing him. It always kills him. Look, if you know anything about this family, it pains them multiple times more than any fan could possibly imagine whenever they lose. This is the Mara family business. The New York Giants are their lives for generations. If you had, I don't know, let's say a delicatessen that was in your family for generations, and suddenly some big supermarket chain with a super duper deli opened a block down the street and started hurting your business and taking business away from your family business that your grandfather built and that your father cultivated and that now you're trying to survive with and are being damaged. How would you feel? You'd be crushed. Because it's not just you want the business to survive, you want it to thrive. It's a source of pride. It's the oxygen in your lungs. It's the blood in your veins. The Mara family, they live and breathe this football team every single day. I see members of this family all the time, and I know the pain that they go through and the agony that they go through every time this team loses. They're human beings, just like every fan is out there. And if you think you agonize, you don't know the percentage of what they're feeling. Trust me when I tell you that. As someone who has covered this franchise for 42 years, I know firsthand the agony that they feel. And as far as the atmosphere around the locker room, Sean, I don't know if you were around earlier in the program, but I've explained that the atmosphere is of disappointment, of frustration, but of let's get back from the bye week and see what they can do about winning some games and getting some feel-good feelings back in the building again. Because that's the breath of fresh air and the sunshine that everybody in the building is craving. From the front office to the scouts to the trainers, the players, the equipment guys. Everybody is looking for a shot of adrenaline and a shot of sunshine and enthusiasm to try to make things a little bit better. Winning cures all ills. We've heard that phrase forever in sports. This team badly needs to turn things around, and they know that. They've got a roster full of first, second, and third year players. Mostly second and third year players. Guys who were drafted in 23 and 24 who are supposed to be important parts of this team going forward. Those guys haven't had a winning season yet. Guys who were drafted in 2022, they know what it's like to win games, to have a winning record, to go to the playoffs, and to win a playoff game. But anybody who's come here in the last 2 years, they haven't. And if you haven't experienced the fruits of victory, the fruits of your hard labor, your blood, your sweat, and your tears, if you haven't been able to experience that, it's harder to do that down the road. When they say that you have to learn how to win, that's not just a phrase. When people continuously lose, they form losing habits. They can be subconscious. They don't even have to be things that people are aware of, but subconsciously, you accept and or form habits that will push you into more losses. That's why it's so critical for the Giants over these last 7 games to win as many games as they can so that they, quote, learn how to win. The experience of winning games down the stretch behooves you as you move forward in your career. And as Joe Schoen has said, with 41 of these 53 players on the roster signed to contracts for next year, they'd love to have some continuity. And they believe there's a lot of young upside talent on this roster. Well, they want to go into next year with a whole slew of these guys coming back. And for them to learn how to win games down the stretch this year, despite all of this adversity, would be a tremendous benefit for the maturing process and the growth process of those foundation players to then help lead the way for next year's team. It absolutely makes no sense when people talk about losing games to get a draft pick, when the draft is not a sure thing. The draft is still a crapshoot, and the bust rate in the draft is still too high to rely on. And when you have professional players who are playing for their pride, for their contracts, and for their teammates, they need to win, because it's that winning feeling that is going to not only help them and their teammates next year, but it also allows maybe the front office to say, yeah, you deserve to be part of the rebuild. You deserve to be part of this team moving forward. Because there's no sure thing in the NFL. There's no sure thing in pro sports, period. You get cut from a professional roster, there is no guarantee that you're going to get picked up by another team or in a better situation next year. None. So for any player in a professional locker room that is playing the second half of a season with a subpar record, to think that it's okay or acceptable to lose to get the club a better draft pick, that's insane. Absolutely insane, and makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. And it's foolish for anyone to even suggest that. Sean, I hope I answered your question fully and completely. All right, let's see. Oh, Sean comes back with another one. Wants to know, what's Brandon Brown's role on the Giants when it comes to scouting a future quarterback? Brandon is a very integral part of this front office staff. The Giants are very, very happy to have him. He definitely helped the Philadelphia Eagles while he was there in procuring a number of talented players. And he's doing the same thing right now for the Giants. And I'm sure that his input is going to be very well heard and considered in all of the positions on the roster. So yes, you are correct. Brandon was part of Eagles staff as they transitioned from Wentz to Foles to Jalen Hurts. Sure. I don't know exactly how many of those transitions, but yes, he was there. Sean says, I feel Shane and Daboll deserve a chance to try and draft their own quarterback. Very fair statement. A lot of people have said as much. They obviously got it right when they were in Buffalo and got Josh Allen. Hopefully they evaluate well this time around for the Giants. Well, you know, it was Brandon Beane who actually drafted Josh Allen, but yes, Joe Shane was a part of that, and Brian Daboll was then assigned as the offensive coordinator to do what he could to bring out the best in the young QB. And that whole process worked extremely well. And I know that it was on the strength of that those guys had very high-quality credentials. And undoubtedly, that was part of the reason why they were even part of the interview process with the New York Giants. Okay. John Nichols. Daniel Jones didn't stand a chance. People hated him on the day he was drafted. Well, John, to be honest, people hated Phil Simms the day he was drafted too. And after 4 or 5 years of injuries and being sidetracked and some inconsistent play, what happened? In 1984, Phil Simms turned around that narrative completely. Was healthy, had fought through many instances of adversity, I should say, and proved everybody wrong. Phil will tell you, if I had him on the program right now, and maybe one day I'll give him a call, we'll try to do something, he would tell you he asked the Giants to trade him several times in those early years because he was so frustrated and disgusted by everything that was happening. Even when in '83, when Bill Parcells, as a rookie head coach, went with Scott Brunner as a starter, Phil wanted out, but he persevered. So from the time he was drafted in '79 till the time in 1984 when he became a bona fide NFL winner, it was a rough go. I've often used that example in regarding Daniel Jones. A rough go. And who knows? The second chapter of Daniel Jones's career has yet to be written. I, for one, hope it is as successful as can be. But, so John, I agree there were a lot of anti-Jones people from the get-go, just like there were a lot of anti-Phil Simms people from the get-go. But somehow, at some point, you got to be able to turn those people with your play on the field. And Jones had that one terrific playoff season in 2022. And since then, again, there's been a lot of landmines around him, but he hasn't been able to replicate that or enhance that, which is what the Giants were counting on when they signed him to the extension. Okay. Let's see. Oh, Sean, we got another one from you. Great podcast, you say. Okay, well, thank you very much. Podcasts can only be as good as the content, and I hope that that you fans do appreciate what we're trying to do here. Recent seasons, you say, Sean Jackson, again, says, John Mara has said he wants to feel the team is truly moving in the right direction. Does Mara define that as young players improving significantly or wins and both? Well, I think he has said he thought going into this season that they were moving in the right direction despite last year's record. I agree with him. I do agree that the roster as it stands is still moving in the right direction. But as is sometimes the case, direction and wins are not one and the same. I do think it is important, and I don't want to speak for ownership here. I will speak for myself, as I said earlier, just a few minutes ago, how important it is for a team in the Giants situation to finish the season with a number of victories. The byproduct of that is you're proving to the rest of the organization that you're on the right track. Nothing proves that you're doing well better than winning games. Okay? That's the easiest way, the most obvious way to prove that you're on the right track is put up W's. That's the best evidence that you can give anybody. So, I don't know what John Mara thinks today. You know, he doesn't often speak to the media. He does periodically during the course of the year. I'm not sure when we will hear from him again. Usually it's at the end of the season. He did have an availability at the documentary about his father a couple of weeks ago, and he said he wasn't planning on making any changes for the rest of the season and didn't expect to make any after the season either. Of course, he also, as per his usual MO, sits down a couple of days after the year is over and then evaluates the entire body of work. His father, Wellington Mara, the late Wellington Mara, who the documentary was about, and if you haven't seen it on NFL Network, please do. It's a wonderful, wonderful film. His father always told him not to make emotional decisions. You wait until the season is over, take a deep breath, and then sit down and sift through all of the information, the facts, the details, and come to a conclusion. Making emotional decisions in this league can only get you in trouble. So these next 7 games, Sean, need to play out. And I would tell you, if they're competitive in all 7 games and they win a bunch, boy, that's great. That's a big thumbs up. If they're competitive in all 7 games and they don't win, well, that makes the evaluation process harder and more difficult. I'm glad that I don't have to make that decision or that evaluation. Again, that's way above my pay grade. But ownership will have to make that evaluation and that decision. So they will be watching these next 7 games very, very carefully. I'm sure of that. Simeon Toko says, Darian Beavers. Yeah, I'm not sure I know what that's about, Simeon. Darian Beavers was a linebacker out of the University of Cincinnati a couple of years back. Had a terrific summer camp as a rookie. I believe he was a 6th-round draft choice. Versatile linebacker. Great summer camp. Blew out his knee in the preseason. Missed a year. Came back. Wasn't quite right. Was on the practice squad. And then subsequently never truly regained his form. And let me see if he is anywhere. I don't know if he actually ever landed anywhere after the Giants released him. No. No, he didn't. What a shame. Darian Beavers waived by the Giants on August 27th of this past summer. And to this point, he has not landed back on an NFL roster. And it is quite a shame because, boy, oh man, his rookie training camp, what a player. He looked really, really good. And I suppose the Giants' evaluation of him was that he was just never going to be the same following that vicious knee injury that he had. Okay. Cecil McCatherine says, you got to take a chance like the Commanders did and New England. Well, you know, the bust rate on first-round quarterbacks is very high. So if you do want to roll the dice for a high-risk, high-reward, you certainly have the right to do so. The Giants have that right. You as a fan have the right to have that opinion. I would not do that. If Justin Herbert were there, absolutely. I felt very strongly about Justin Herbert. I felt if Drake May had fallen to the Giants, that would have been very difficult for me because I was a big Drake May fan coming out of school. You know, I was a big Bo Nix fan coming out of school. In years past, you know, Justin Herbert was a quarterback that I really, really thought was dynamite and would love to have had the Giants draft Justin Herbert and had him sit behind Eli for a year or two, and then they would have been set. So, you know, you gotta know if you're all in on that quarterback prospect or not. Because if you're not all in on that quarterback, if you're not, it really becomes even more risky to roll the dice. And look at it this way, okay? There are so many theories about what you do with a player. Do you play him right away? Do you sit him for a year? You sit him for 2 years? In today's NFL, the climate is as such that most of the time, you're throwing that rookie quarterback in there right away. You're not letting him sit and wait. I know some people out there are going to laugh their butts off when I say this, but maybe the best thing that happened to J.J. McCarthy is that he got hurt. Because now he gets to watch for a year. And he will be more mature and more ready for the National Football League when he finally cracks the Minnesota Vikings lineup. Now, I don't know that he's going to be successful or not. He was not one of my favorite quarterbacks in this draft. But this is not about the Minnesota Vikings. This is about the Giants. I simply throw this out there to tell you that that's a guy who I think certainly benefits from not being thrown in right away. Caleb Williams. I get all the highlights. I get the skill set, but there's a lot about him that didn't check boxes for me. He hasn't done nearly as well as the Chicago Bears would have liked. I'm not surprised. At the same time, you need to wait at least 3 years before you even start making an evaluation. So I'm not going to gloat on Drake May being pretty good right now, and I'm not going to gloat on Bo Nix being pretty good right now. Although I believe he was the AFC Offensive Player of the Week this week, was he not, with the Broncos? But I won't gloat on that yet. Let's wait 3 years. Okay? If those of you remember when I was on Big Blue Kickoff Live many years ago, I predicted that RG3 would win the NFL Rookie of the year he came out with the then Washington Redskins. I also said that he will not last in this league because of the way he runs and the way teams hit, and he's going to get injured, and he will not have a long NFL career. He'll be Rookie of the Year and burst onto the scene, and his career will be shortened by injury, and he will not last. And the then Redskins will be sorry that they drafted him because they will not have a long-term franchise quarterback. I turned out to be right on RG3. I believe that Jaden Daniels is in a similar boat. I think he's done a very good job. He's going to get all these accolades for this rookie season unless he strengthens his body, gets some more beef on his frame, learns how to get rid of the ball quicker, and learns how to be a lot less reckless running the ball. I'm not so sure that he's going to have a long franchise-type NFL career. So as much as I'm going to put the brakes on May and Nix and not brag on them, I'm going to put the brakes on Jaden Daniels too. Let's talk about how those guys are 3 years from now and decide if they really are on the right track to being a long-term franchise quarterback. It's the way it's got to be. All right. See, so what else you got for me? Daniel has turned out to be the best of the lot. I'm not sure exactly where you're going with that, but, you know, I remember how the year that Jones came out, there was a tremendous groundswell for Dwayne Haskins. And any of you who remember, I was 1,000% that Dwayne Haskins would not work out well in the NFL. Now, it's a tragic story that developed, obviously, with Dwayne Haskins after he got into the league. But that doesn't change the fact that in the short time he was in the NFL, his game did not translate. It just didn't. And then, of course, there was the tragic accident, which, you know, inexplicable and horrific in every way. But, you know, I won't run from what I said. I did not think his game would translate into the NFL, and it did not in the short time that he had an opportunity to present it. Most of your first-round quarterbacks are going to bust. They just are. And it just makes you very wary of taking one. That's it. There have been very few over the last decade that I really, really liked. I will tell you this. I'll admit this to you, and you guys know I'm a huge Eli Manning backer. I thought in the 2004 draft going in that Ben Roethlisberger was going to be the most successful of the quarterbacks coming into that draft. And there was the big three, right? There was Ben Roethlisberger, Eli Manning, and Phillip Rivers. And I thought that Big Ben would be the most successful. That was the guy who I had targeted as the best QB potential in the NFL in that draft. Well, what happened? Each of the three guys went in the spot where they were the best fit. Eli Manning came to the Giants, had a Hall of Fame career. Ben Roethlisberger went to the Pittsburgh Steelers, had a Hall of Fame career. They both won 2 Super Bowls. Phillip Rivers went to the Chargers, had what also could be a Hall of Fame career, but did not win any Super Bowls. The demeanor of those guys and the way that they played fit their cities perfectly. Fit their cities perfectly, fit the styles of their coaches perfectly, fit the styles of their teams and their offenses perfectly. Had Manning been with the Chargers, it probably wouldn't have gone as well. Had Rivers been with the Giants, he did not have the demeanor that would have worked here in New York, especially going through some early struggles. It would not have gone as well. Big Ben was perfect for Pittsburgh. The gritty, blue-collar, steel city of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Ben was a tough guy. He was perfect for there. All three of those guys landed exactly where they should have to maximize their NFL careers. They were all perfect fits. So I won't run from my prediction that Big Ben Roethlisberger was going to be the best quarterback in that draft. I won't run from that. But all three landed in exactly the perfect spot. And obviously, Ben turned out to be a Hall of Famer. So, great. That's part of what people have to take into account when you look at the draft and you look at a quarterback, or even if you bring a guy in from the outside. Kerry Collins was on the recycle bin, and when they brought him to New York, he had to undergo a full off-the-field program to make sure that he was able to deal with the pressures and the spotlight and the responsibilities of being the starting quarterback for the New York Football Giants. And it worked out extremely well. Kerry Collins will tell you the New York Giants helped him grow as a person and made him a better man, not just a really good quarterback. There's a lot that goes into this. And that's what we talk about when we say, okay, well, does the quarterback have the skill set or the toolbox to be a really good NFL quarterback? Well, that's one question you have to ask. Sure, that's the basic question. Then you have to start asking other things like, personality, mental toughness, emotional toughness. You start talking about outside circumstances, etc., etc. It's all part of it. It's all part of it. Hey, how about that? We got somebody down in the waiting room. Let me go to him. John. How are you, John?
Some guy was trying to touch me, so I went down and he was trying to do me. I said,
I'm
no.
not sure that I totally understand what that's all about. I guess he's trying to create a rap song. But that didn't work out too good. Take some vocal lessons. Take some voice lessons, John. they have teachers who do that. And maybe you'll be able to enhance the pipes a little bit. Trust me, as someone who's been doing sportscasting for 42 years, I know a lot about the pipes. You need some help there. Let's see. All right, I don't see any more comments here. Let's see. All right, we have no more chats, and we have no more video calls and no more audio calls. So I suppose, well, it's 8:55. Actually, a couple minutes. Yeah, so let's see if we can take it just a couple more minutes. Want to add a couple of things about the game this week, just before we pack it up. We will have another edition of the Big Blue Breakdown coming up on Friday. It'll be a taped edition. We'll go through the state of the Giants real quick, state of the Buccaneers, in case you haven't been following them. We'll give you an update on exactly where they're at, injuries, how they've been playing, what their strengths and weaknesses are. And then, of course, we'll go our 3 key matchups. And in our 3 key matchups, we specifically talk about player versus player and tell you that, okay, these would be 3 key matchups that the Giants are going to have to deal with if they're going to win the football game. And we'll give that to you in Friday's program. But let me just briefly mention this to you. The Tampa Bay Bucs are bringing Sterling Shepard back to MetLife Stadium as he makes his first appearance against his former Giants teammates. He right now is a starting wide receiver for them because of a number of injuries. Shep has been with them now for 8 games since he came off the practice squad. Remember, during the offseason, we thought Sterling Shepard was going to retire. He pretty much said as much. And then during the offseason, Baker Mayfield, his former college quarterback teammate at Oklahoma, called him up and said, why don't you come down here and play? We could use you. So, being a former college teammate, he's like, that's my man. So he goes down and signs with the Bucs, gets cut at the end of training camp, signs to the practice squad, and hangs out. Couple weeks in, boom, they start getting dinged up, and they call up Sterling Shepard. So far, Shep has 16 catches for 186 yards, and he caught a touchdown pass against the Atlanta Falcons. His best game to date so far, he caught 48 yards worth of passes on 4 receptions. So he has been a small part of the Buccaneers offense, but nonetheless, he's getting into games and he has extended his career. He was a pro's pro with the Giants. He was well liked by the administration, the coaching staff, his teammates, and the media, and the fans, a fan favorite. Sterling Shepard was one of those guys who was very, very easy to root for and always rooted on his teammates. You remember when he was injured during the 2022 season and he became a cheerleader on the sidelines, waving his towel like Phil McConkey used to do back in the 80s and cheering on his team as much as he possibly could. I expect the Giants fans to give Sterling Shepard a very warm reception on Sunday. He deserves it. Came back from 2 debilitating injuries to resuscitate his NFL career. And just because he's wearing a Buccaneers helmet and jersey doesn't mean that these fans should forget that. I personally would love to see them acknowledge it, and I think he would acknowledge with a tip of the cap or a wave himself. And I do hope that'll be a nice warm moment for the Giants fans and for Sterling Shepard himself, who was just a real pleasure to be around during his time with the Giants. In fact, he was here for what? Caught almost 400 bad passes, I believe, over the course of his Giants career. I want to say he was here for, 8 years? Let me just check that out a second. I think he was here for 8 years. It might have been a little less. It was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Yep. Was here for 8 years. And caught over 350 balls over the course of his Giants career. And so he, by the way, in Tampa, he's wearing number 17. Just so you know. 87 with the Giants, then took 3 in honor of his dad. In Tampa, he's wearing number 17. And it'll be really great to see Sterling Shepard back. I see the Focus also says Shep. I'm sure he's going to give him a nice applause when he sees him. And then let's see, what else? Sean Jackson wants to clarify something, says outside of Kyler Murray's recent resurgence, the 2019 quarterback class looks subpar. DJ, Drew Lock. Paul, what do you think about Michael Penix last year's draft? I wanted Giants to draft Neighbors and Penix. I was not as high on Penix as a lot of other people were. Again, my 2 guys who I targeted were Drake May and Bo Nix. But we can get into Penix another time. Our time has run short. We have hit the bewitching hour of 10 o'clock. We have actually, believe it or not, folks, been with you for 2.5 hours tonight. So we'll be back with you on Friday with the 3 key matchups against the Buccaneers. We'll be back next Monday with a tape program. We'll have it taped overnight. And you'll get the game balls and gassers, the guys who did well and the guys who didn't do so well for the New York Giants on offense and defense and special teams. We'll break it down for you, and we will give you specific reasons why we cite those guys. That, of course, comes every Monday after Sunday's action. And then we are usually back on Wednesday night, okay? Usually on Wednesday night live at 7:30 Eastern Time. Now, I'm not sure if we're going to be able to do that coming up next week because there's a Thanksgiving game down in Dallas that the Giants will be playing on Thursday the 28th. And I am part of the traveling party. You know, I have television responsibilities to do player interviews and get post-game reaction on the Giants post-game live show on MSG. And I also do, obviously, radio pregame with Casillas and Schmelk. So I've got travel responsibilities on Wednesday, so I don't know if we're going to be here live next Wednesday night. So stay tuned to my Twitter page at GiantsWFAN, and we will have an update on exactly how our programming is going to go next week. We might have to move it to Tuesday. We will have to see. But in the meantime, I want to thank everybody for participating into tonight's chat. And also, of course, C. Webb, the only guy who dared to actually have a video call tonight. And it's been fun chatting with all of you. We are always here to talk New York Giants football. And again, Big Blue Breakdown is going to be back on Friday with your 3 key matchups against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm Paul Dottino. So long, everybody. We will see you next time on Big Blue Breakdown Live.